action in the assessment of the child's family, consistent with paragraph C2 of this section, and 3. Initial assessment refers to the assessment of the child and the family assessment conducted prior to the child's first IFSP meeting. 3. A child's medical and other records may be used to establish eligibility, without conducting an evaluation of the child under this part if those records indicate that the child's level of functioning in one or more of the developmental areas identified in paragraph 303.21 A1 constitutes a developmental delay or that the child otherwise meets the criteria for an infant or toddler with a disability under paragraph 303.21. If the child's Part 100 eligibility is established under this paragraph, the lead agency or EIS provider must conduct assessments of the child and family in accordance with paragraph C of this section. 2. Qualified personnel must use informed clinical opinion when conducting an evaluation and assessment of the child. In addition, the lead agency must ensure that informed clinical opinion may be used as an independent basis to establish a child's eligibility under this part even when other instruments do not establish eligibility. However, in no event may informed clinical opinion be used to negate the results of evaluation instruments used to establish eligibility under paragraph B of this section. 4. All evaluations and assessments of the child and family must be conducted by qualified personnel, in a non-discriminatory manner, and selected and administered so as not to be racially or culturally discriminatory. 5. Unless clearly not feasible to do so, all evaluations and assessments of a child must be conducted in the native language of the child, in accordance with the definition of native language in paragraph 303.25. 6. Unless clearly not feasible to do so, family assessments must be conducted in the native language of the family members being assessed, in accordance with the definition of native language in paragraph 303.25. B. Procedures for evaluation of the child. In conducting an evaluation, no single procedure may be used as the sole criterion for determining a child's eligibility under this part. Procedures must include 1. Administering an evaluation instrument, 2. Taking the child's history, including interviewing the parent, 3. Identifying the child's level of functioning in each of the developmental areas in paragraph 303.21 A1, 4. Gathering information from other sources such as family members, other caregivers, medical providers, social workers, and educators, if necessary, to understand the full scope of the child's unique strengths and needs, and 5. Reviewing medical, educational, or other records. C. Procedures for assessment of the child and family. 1. An assessment of each infant or toddler with a disability must be conducted by qualified personnel in order to identify the child's unique strengths and needs and the early intervention services appropriate to meet those needs. The assessment of the child must include the following. A review of the results of the evaluation conducted under paragraph B of this section. 2. Personal observations of the child. And 3. The identification of the child's needs in each of the developmental areas in paragraph 303.21 A1. 2. A family-directed assessment must be conducted by qualified personnel in order to identify the family's resources, priorities, and concerns and the supports and services necessary to enhance the family's capacity to meet the developmental needs of the family's infant or toddler with a disability. The family-directed assessment must be voluntary on the part of each family member participating in the assessment, 2. Be based on information obtained through an assessment tool and also through an interview with those family members who elect to participate in the assessment, and 3. Include the family's description of its resources, priorities, and concerns related to enhancing the child's development. Last modified on July 12, 2017. Is to provide an update on the requirement in Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, ESEA, as amended by the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA. related to participation on an alternate assessment aligned with alternate academic achievement standards, AAAS, for the 2018-2019 school year, SY. As a reminder, the SEA requires that only students with the most significant cognitive disabilities may take an AAAS and limits the number of students that a state may assess with an AAAS to no more than 1.0% of all students in the grades assessed in a state. 1 However, a state that is able to meet a number of requirements may apply to the U.S. Department of Education, the department, for a 1-year waiver from the 1.0% participation requirement. On May 16, 2017, the department posted information regarding the procedures for a state to apply for such a waiver for SY 2017-2018.2. The department granted the waiver to states that demonstrated compliance with the waiver requirements. 3 For a state that was not granted this waiver last year, the same requirements apply. In addition, any state that was approved for a waiver of this requirement in SY 2017-2018 and that needs to extend the waiver 1C, http://www.ed.gov/documents/essa-act-of-1965.pdf 2C, https://www.ed.gov/admins/lead/account/SAA/1% cap memo 51617.pdf 3C, https://www.ed.gov/admins/lead/account/stateplan17/waivers/index.html 400 Maryland Avenue, SW, Washington, District of Columbia 20202, www.ed.gov. The Department of Education's mission is to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access. Page 2 for SY 2018-2019 is required to demonstrate substantial progress towards achieving each component of the prior year's plan and timeline to ensure that the state is making progress towards meeting the 1.0% cap and assessing only students with the most significant cognitive disabilities with an AAAS. The requirements associated with demonstrating substantial progress are described in more detail below. Information for states applying for waiver for the first time in SY 2018-2019. The letter on May 16, 2017, describes the requirements and procedures to request a waiver from the 1.0% cap. States applying for a waiver should ensure that their request addresses each requirement. Among waiver requests submitted in 2017-2018, the department noted that some states did not provide data from the current or previous school year to show the number and percentage of students overall and from each subgroup of students who will take or took the AAAS with respect to each subject for which the state seeks a waiver. Example, this is sample data only. It does not represent any single state's data. Group total grades 3, 8, and 10 ELA number taken state LAAASGR 3, 8, and 10% taking state LAAASGR 3, 8, and 10 475,611 7,453 all students English learners 41,232 911 Black 46,258 1,116 Hispanic Latino 95,464 2,168 Asian 31,956 432 White 260,701 3,919 Econ Disadv 172,190 4,754 1.57% equals 7,453 475,611 2.21%, 2.41%, 2.27%, 1.35%, 1.50%, 2.76% data to show that the state has assessed the achievement of at least 95% of all students and 95% of children with disabilities who are enrolled in grades for which the assessment is required. Note: include data separately for each requested subject. Reading Language Arts, RLA, Mathematics and/or Science. This percentage must include all students assessed with the general assessment and the AAAAS for each applicable subject. Example, this is sample data only. It does not represent any single state's data. Subject area group enrolled assessed percent assessed RLA all students total GR 38 10,424,382 409,439 96.5% for a state applying for a waiver for the 2018-2019 school year could submit data from either 2018-2019 current school year or 2017-2018 previous school year. RLA children with disabilities, CWD totals GR 38 1093,121 89,369 96.0%. Page 3 Math all students totals GR 38 10,424,653 409,978 96.5% Math CWD totals GR 38 1092,745 89,745 96.8% Science CWD totals GR 4 7 1030,528 29,852 97.8% evidence that the SEA has verified that each LEA that the state anticipates will assess more than 1.0% of its assessed students in any subject using an AAAS. Followed the state's guidelines for participation in the AAAS-5, and will address any disproportionality in the percentage of students in any subgroup taking an AAAS. A plan and timeline with clear, actionable steps and milestones that includes a clear description of how the state will improve the implementation of its guidelines for participation in the AAAS, including by reviewing and, if necessary, revising its definition of students with the most significant cognitive disabilities, C34 CFR 200.6 D1, so that the state meets the 1.0% cap in each subject for which assessments are administered in future school years. A clear description of how it will monitor and regularly evaluate each LEA to ensure that the LEA provides sufficient training such that school staff who participate as members of an individualized education program, IEP, team or other placement team understand and implement the guidelines established by the state for participation in an AAAS so that all students are appropriately assessed. And a clear description of how the state will address any disproportionality in the percentage of students taking an AAAS as identified through the data provided. 6 Information for states applying to extend a previously granted waiver. A state that wishes to request an extension of a waiver that they received in SY 2017-2018 should provide updated information regarding each requirement in the previous year's submission, as outlined in the May 16, 2017 memorandum. In preparing a waiver renewal request, states must continue to meet each requirement associated with a first-year waiver. Additionally, a state must demonstrate substantial progress towards achieving each component of the prior year's plan and timeline. As noted above, in creating a plan and timeline, a state must address 3 areas within its plan and timeline: how the state will improve the implementation of its guidelines for participation in the AAAS, including by reviewing and, if necessary, revising its definition of students with the most significant cognitive disabilities, C34 CFR 200.6 D1, so that the state meets the 1.0% cap in each subject for which assessments are administered in future school years. How the state will monitor and regularly evaluate each LEA to ensure that the LEA provides sufficient training such that school staff who participate as members of an IEP team or other placement team understand and implement the guidelines established by the state for participation. 534 CFR 200.6 D, consistent with Section 612A 16C of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. 634 CFR 200.6 C4 IV Science all students totals GR4 7 10 141,460 138,957 98.2%. Page 4 in an EAAAS so that all students are appropriately assessed, and how the state will address any disproportionality in the percentage of students taking an AAAS as identified through the data provided. 7. The department will base decisions about extensions of any 1.0% cap waivers by evaluating whether the state met the requirements as well as the degree to which it has demonstrated progress against the previous year's plan for improvement. States with questions about these waiver requests should contact their Office of State Support contacts at OSS state at ed.gov, e.g., oss.nebraska@ed.gov, and their Office of Special Education Programs State Lead. Thank you for your continued commitment to our nation's students. 734 CFR 200.6 C4 IV.
Isn't that amazing? There's just rules to everything. And, it's really going to be up to us if we understand. I'm going to pause this for a minute so that I can add other information, as I don't believe we really understand special education or education in the first place. And pause. There's the pause. There we go.
200.1 to paragraph 299.12. Title A, Improving the Academic Achievement of the Disadvantaged. Paragraph 200.1 to paragraph 200.104 200.109, Improving Basic Programs Operated by Local Educational Agencies. Paragraph 200.1 to paragraph 200.79, Standards and Assessments. Paragraph 200.1 to paragraph 200.10, Inclusion of all students. The 4th of August 2016. Text A state's academic assessment system required under paragraph 200.2 must provide for the participation of all students in the grades assessed in accordance with this section. A. Students eligible under IDEA and section 504, 1. Appropriate accommodations. A state's academic assessment system must provide, A, for each student with a disability, as defined under section 6023 of the IDEA, appropriate accommodations that the student's IEP team determines are necessary to measure the academic achievement of the student relative to the state's academic content and academic achievement standards for the grade in which the student is enrolled, consistent with paragraph 200.1 B2, B3, and C, and B for each student covered under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, as amended, Section 504. Appropriate accommodations that the student's placement team determines are necessary to measure the academic achievement of the student relative to the state's academic content and academic achievement standards for the grade in which the student is enrolled, consistent with paragraph 200.1 B2, B3, and C. 2. A state must, A. Develop, disseminate information on, and promote the use of appropriate accommodations to increase the number of students with disabilities who are tested against academic achievement standards for the grade in which a student is enrolled, and B. Ensure that regular and special education teachers and other appropriate staff know how to administer assessments, including making appropriate use of accommodations for students with disabilities and students covered under Section 504. 2. Alternate assessments. The state's academic assessment system must provide for one or more alternate assessments for a child with a disability as defined under Section 6023 of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, whom the child's IEP team determines cannot participate in all or part of the state assessments under paragraph A1 of this section, even with appropriate accommodations. 2. Alternate assessments must yield results for the grade in which the student is enrolled in at least reading, language arts, mathematics, and, beginning in the 2007-2008 school year, science, except as provided in the following paragraph. B. For students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. Alternate assessments may yield results that measure the achievement of those students relative to the alternate academic achievement standards the state has defined under paragraph 200.1d. 3. If a state permits the use of alternate assessments that yield results based on alternate academic achievement standards, the state must document that students with the most significant cognitive disabilities are, to the extent possible, included in the general curriculum. 3. Reporting. A state must report separately to the Secretary, under Section 1111H4 of the Act, the number and percentage of students with disabilities taking regular assessments described in paragraph 200.2, 2. Regular assessments with accommodations, 3. Alternate assessments based on the grade level academic achievement standards described in paragraph 200.1 c. IV. Alternate assessments based on modified academic achievement standards in school years prior to 2015-2016, and V. Alternate assessments based on the alternate academic achievement standards described in paragraph 200.1 d. B. Limited English proficient students. A state must include limited English proficient students in its academic assessment system as follows. 1. In general. Consistent with paragraphs B2 and B4 of this section, the state must assess limited English proficient students in a valid and reliable manner that includes A. Reasonable accommodations, and B. To the extent practicable, assessments in the language and form most likely to yield accurate and reliable information on what those students know and can do to determine the student's mastery of skills in subjects other than English until the students have achieved English language proficiency. 2. In its state plan, the state must A. Identify the languages other than English that are present in the student population served by the SEA, and B. Indicate the languages for which yearly student academic assessments are not available and are needed. 3. The state, A. must make every effort to develop such assessments, and B. may request assistance from the Secretary in identifying linguistically accessible academic assessments that are needed. 2. Assessing reading language arts in English. Unless an extension of time is warranted under paragraph B2 of this section, a state must assess, using assessments written in English, the achievement of any limited English proficient student in meeting the state's reading language arts academic standards if the student has attended schools in the United States, excluding Puerto Rico, for 3 or more consecutive years. 2. An LEA may continue, for no more than 2 additional consecutive years, to assess a limited English proficient student under paragraph B1 of this section if the LEA determines, on a case-by-case individual basis, that the student has not reached the level of English language proficiency sufficient to yield valid and reliable information on what the student knows and can do on reading language arts assessments written in English. 3. The requirements in paragraph B2 and 2 of this section do not permit an exemption from participating in the state assessment system for limited English proficient students. 3. Assessing English proficiency. Unless a state receives an extension under paragraph B3(2) of this section, the state must require each LEA, beginning no later than the 2002-2003 school year, to assess annually the English proficiency, including reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills, of all students with limited English proficiency in schools in the LEA. 2. The Secretary may extend, for 1 additional year, the deadline in paragraph B3(I) of this section if the state demonstrates that A. Full implementation is not possible due to exceptional or uncontrollable circumstances such as 1. A natural disaster, or 2. A precipitous and unforeseen decline in the financial resources of the state, and B. The state can complete implementation within the additional 1-year period. 4. Recently arrived limited English proficient students. A state may exempt a recently arrived limited English proficient student, as defined in paragraph B4IV of this section, from 1 administration of the state's reading language arts assessment under paragraph 200.2. B. If the state does not assess a recently arrived limited English proficient student on the state's reading language arts assessment, the state must count the year in which the assessment would have been administered as the first of the 3 years in which the student may take the state's reading language arts assessment in a native language under Section 1111B3CX of the Act. C. The state and its leads must report on state and district report cards under Section 1111H of the Act the number of recently arrived limited English proficient students who are not assessed on the state's reading language arts assessment. D. Nothing in paragraph B4 of this section relieves an LEA from its responsibility under applicable law to provide recently arrived limited English proficient students with appropriate instruction to assist them in gaining English language proficiency as well as content knowledge in reading language arts and mathematics. 2. A state must assess the English language proficiency of a recently arrived limited English proficient student pursuant to paragraph B3 of this section. 3. A state must assess the mathematics achievement of a recently arrived limited English proficient student pursuant to paragraph 200.2. IV. A recently arrived limited English proficient student is a student with limited English proficiency who has attended schools in the United States for less than 12 months. The phrase, schools in the United States includes only schools in the 50 states and the District of Columbia. C. Migratory and other mobile students. A state must include migratory students, as defined in Title I, Part 100, of the Act, and other mobile students in its academic assessment system, even if those students are not included for accountability purposes under Section 1111B3C of the Act. D. Students experiencing homelessness. 1. A state must include homeless students, as defined in Section 725(2) of Title VII, Subtitle B of the McKinney-Vento Act, in its academic assessment, reporting, and accountability systems, consistent with Section 1111B3C of the Act. 2. The state is not required to disaggregate, as a separate category under paragraph 200.2b10, the assessment results of the students referred to in paragraph D1 of this section. Authority. 20 U.S.C. 6311 B3, approved by the Office of Management and Budget under Control Number 1810-0576, 34 CFR 200.6, 67 FR 45041, July 5, 2002, as amended at 67 FR 71715, December 2nd, 2002, 68 FR 68702, December 9th, 2003, 71 FR 54193, September 13, 2006, 72 FR 17779, April 9th, 2007, 80 FR 50784, August 21st, 2015.
So that just tells you that the law is the law. And the states have a requirement to meet the basic law of access for all children. And I'm just trying to understand what is going on here in Clark County, Nevada, where they have so many children who are caught up in this harbor. And the harbor is legal because the state voted it. But they voted for your children to be taken away and discriminated against, and it's time for the conversation to begin. Failure just is not the option. Where's the data when they're putting these kids in restrictive environments, the most restrictive environments as incarceration is in America? And I'll pause this recording and see if I find one more thing.
The LEA's guidelines must identify only those accommodations for each assessment that do not invalidate the score, and 2. Instruct IEP teams to select, for each assessment, only those accommodations that do not invalidate the score. C. Alternate assessments aligned with alternate academic achievement standards for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. 1. If a state has adopted alternate academic achievement standards for children with disabilities who are students with the most significant cognitive disabilities as permitted in Section 1111B1E of the SEA, the state, or, in the case of a district-wide assessment, an LEA must develop and implement alternate assessments and guidelines for the participation in alternate assessments of those children with disabilities who cannot participate in regular assessments, even with accommodations, as indicated in their respective IEPs, as provided in paragraph A of this section. 2. For assessing the academic progress of children with disabilities who are students with the most significant cognitive disabilities under Title I of the SEA, the alternate assessments and guidelines in paragraph C1 of this section must, I, be aligned with the challenging state academic content standards under Section 1111B1 of the SEA and alternate academic achievement standards under Section 1111B1E of the SEA, and 2. Measure the achievement of children with disabilities who are students with the most significant cognitive disabilities against those standards. 3. Consistent we.
So all that really just said is that even if a child has a disability, they have a right to access the general curriculum. And there's one more thing we have to talk about before I end this video.
And 20 total funding, to date $379,378 description of original award, fiscal year 2020, $379,378. The National Internet Crimes Against Children, ICAC Task Force Program, consists of state and local law enforcement task forces dedicated to developing effective responses to online enticement of children by sexual predators, child exploitation, and child obscenity and pornography cases. Each state and local task force that is part of the national program shall, 1. Consist of state and local investigators, prosecutors, forensic specialists, and education specialists who are dedicated to addressing the goals of the task force. 2. Engage in proactive investigations, forensic examinations, and effective prosecutions of internet crimes against children. 3. Provide forensic, preventive, and investigative assistance to parents, educators, prosecutors, law enforcement, and others concerned with internet crimes against children. 4. Develop multi-jurisdictional, multi-agency partnerships and responses to internet crimes against children offenses through ongoing informational, administrative, and technological support to other state and local law enforcement agencies, as a means for such agencies to acquire the necessary knowledge, personnel, and specialized equipment to investigate and prosecute such offenses. 5. Participate in nationally coordinated investigations in any case in which the Attorney General determines such participation to be necessary, as permitted by the available resources of such task force. 6. Establish or adopt investigative and prosecution standards consistent with established norms, to which such task force shall comply. 7. Investigate and seek prosecution on tips related to internet crimes against children, including tips from Operation Fair Play, the National Internet Crimes Against Children Data System, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's Cyber Tip Line, ICAC task forces, and other federal, state, and local agencies, with priority being given to investigate leads that indicate the possibility of identifying or rescuing child victims, including investigative leads that indicate the likelihood of seriousness of offense or dangerousness to the community. 8. Develop procedures for handling seized evidence for ICAC task force lead agencies and affiliate agencies. 9. Maintain reports required by OJJDP and other reports and records as determined by the Attorney General, and 10. Seek to comply with national standards regarding the investigation and prosecution of internet crimes against children, as set forth by the Attorney General, to the extent such standards are consistent with the law of the state where the task force is located. The Nevada Internet Crimes Against Children, NVICAC task force intends to increase its proactive investigations, arrests, affiliate memberships, forensic examinations, information technology, IT assistance and members' education and training on relevant subject matter. The funds received through this request will serve approximately 3.1 million citizens in the state of Nevada, as well as millions of tourists who choose Nevada as a vacation destination each year. The Las Vegas Police Department will maintain a task force consisting of state and local investigators, prosecutors, forensic and education specialists dedicated to addressing the goals of this program. The task force will engage in proactive investigations, forensic examinations, effective prosecutions and provide forensic, preventative and investigative assistance to parents, educators, prosecutors, law enforcement and others concerned with technology-facilitated crimes against children. CATF. Date created, October 22nd, 2020. Side navigation. Open funding. How to apply past funding awards. List of funded projects. Performance measures. Peer review. Similar awards. Refocusing education with students and police by enlisting courts and training. Respect. Gang Alternative. Incorporated Violence Intervention Project, VIP, Preparedness for Continuity of Operations in Case of Power Outages for Icac Residential Facilities. Top Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. About OJJDP. About OJJDP legislation. Contact us. News and events. JUVJUST newsletter. Blogs. Upcoming events. Key resources. Funding and awards. State support. Statistical briefing. Book model programs. Guide resources. Library. RASO.
Okay, so that's America. We all know what America is. Understand, we just don't play. We have not played the game. It is time for us to step up. This is the only thing I really could find out, out there in regards to what actually happens. But you all know, when I started this video, it was about the power of special education. Don't be afraid of the system. Get into it and understand the value of it. I'm going to stop this recording and save it and share it. Like, subscribe, and follow me on Anchor. Follow me on YouTube and follow me. Just, do what I do. Educate yourself.